Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of Argentina, Javier Milei. It is a great joy for me to be in the United States again, and it is an honor to be able to speak to all of you today.
Es una gran alegría para mí estar nuevamente en los Estados Unidos y es un honor poder hablar ante todos ustedes hoy.
Thank you very much to those present, and especially thank you to CPAC, who has always had a special consideration for me. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mercy.
Gracias, Matt. Gracias, Mercy.
Just a month ago, I said in the Davos Forum that I think we are going through a turning point in our history.
Hace apenas un mes dije en el foro de Davos que creo que estamos atravesando un punto de inflexión en nuestra historia.
History takes place in phases or stages, moments when the spirit and the idea materialize in a person or in the group of people, sometimes close, sometimes with kilometers of distance between them, but with an invisible conductive thread that if it could be observed, I presume it would be very similar to the images that we observe of the neural networks of the human brain. Today we are precisely in one of those moments in which history, with a capital H, is changing its course. We are seeing in real time the destiny of the bifurcated world towards a new path, different from the place where the elites were taking us and the political establishment of our countries.
Distinto del lugar al que nos estaban llevando las élites y el establishment político de nuestros países.
In the same way that in the 1930s it was possible to see that the flame of freedom was extinguishing and that a new change of serenity for humanity was beginning, today we can finally say that the era of the omnipresent state has ended.
La llama de la libertad se estaba apagando y que comenzaba un nuevo cambio de servidumbre para la humanidad. Hoy finalmente podemos decir que la era del Estado omnipresente ha terminado.
Today we are witnesses of a moment in which the long march of the state over the individual is coming to an end. I am of course referring to the collapse of the collectivist model and the dawn of a new era of freedom. We have prepared ourselves for this moment, and I genuinely believe that we are giving a crucial battle for the future of humanity. But as I always say, you can only work effectively if the diagnosis from which you start is the right one. We have to understand where we are standing and what we are facing in order to know how to get where we want to be. Throughout the world, Western societies face the same problem and the same enemy. A political class that extracts more and more resources from citizens through taxes in order to implement an unlimited state expansion model. A class with a complex of God that intends to regulate every aspect of the life of the people, honoring one of the maxims of the fascism of Benito Mussolini: within the state everything, outside the state nothing, and nothing against the state. We have called this political class the party of the state, an extended caste whose members, beyond superficial differences, share the fundamental idea of the events of the state over society. They are all those who, for economic interest or ideological conviction or even certain naive idealism, work for the interests of the state. Traditional means of communication, oligarchy, union oligarchy, preventive businessmen, permanent bureaucrats, non-electors, and consequently intrinsically irresponsible. The so-called non-governmental organizations that do the dirty work of politicians, the academic institutions that provide the theoretical framework for the state expansion, the supranational organizations, and all those who in some way belong to the great sect of world collectivism. And, of course, this includes the traditional political parties that, regardless of their color, coincide in the fundamental thesis that more states are always better. In Argentina, for example, we had a political system composed of about 50 shadows socialism. In the United States, there was the illusion of bipartisanship of a Democratic Party that marked the agenda and a Republican Party unable to face it until the arrival of President Donald Trump. Curiously, my people will have to wait until the end. Curiously, President Trump is an insider, just like me, because the task we have ahead, the challenge we have ahead, is not for traditional politicians who have lived the entire life of the system. It is for people who do not owe anything to anyone, who are not committed by the system's vices, and who know that change is more important than power over power itself. In the political establishment of our two nations, there was a more or less explicit mentality that the advance of the state was equivalent to the advance of democracy.
En el establishment político de nuestras dos naciones existía una mentalidad más o menos explícita de que el avance del Estado equivalía a avance de la democracia.
That each conquest of the state implied an act of social justice before the alleged injustice of freedom, that the role of the state was to take us to an equal utopia through the systematic creation of supposed new rights that obviously had to be financed by taxpayers. It is precisely in the center of this scheme that the politicians, the main beneficiaries of this model of unlimited expansion of the state, those who make others live a lifestyle by force, depositors of powers and privileges that will be the envy of any monarch in history, no matter the television fights of the alleged party differences. Everything works for God himself, the sinister and his manifestation on earth, the Leviathan that Hobbes spoke of. That is why, saving some particularities of each nation, all of us here have the same mission to take power away from the party of the state and return it to society.
Por eso, salvando algunas particularidades propias de cada nación, todos los que estamos aquí tenemos una misma misión: quitar el poder al partido del Estado y devolvérselo a la sociedad.
That is to say, as Albert Nock, who described in his book Our Enemy the State, said, that social power was progressively reattached and transferred to the state by force.
Es decir, como decía Albert Nock, que describió en su libro En nuestro enemigo el Estado, que el poder social fue progresivamente arrebatado y trasladado al Estado por la fuerza.
Our objective is to take the opposite path, to increase the power of the citizen and to take the power away from the state. We love you. We love you.
Me too.
Me too. Sorry, she is my girlfriend.
She's my girlfriend.
Sorry, she's my girlfriend. Of course, it cannot be done better by managing the state as it is or simply by correctly administering the resources it has, but the only rational way is to shrink the state to its minimum possible expression.
Reducir el tamaño del Estado es en sí mismo un acto de justicia, porque cada erogación del Estado es una sustracción del pagador de impuestos.
From our point of view, the only acceptable state is the smallest possible state to return to the citizen what is theirs.
Desde nuestro punto de vista, el único Estado aceptable es el Estado más chico posible para devolverle al ciudadano lo que es suyo.
Therefore, of all the attributes that have nothing to do directly with the protection of the three fundamental rights,
por eso, todas las atribuciones que no tengan que ver directamente con la protección de los tres derechos fundamentales, que son el derecho
which are the right to life, freedom, and private property, must return to their origin, the individuals associated voluntarily without interference of the state. This must be the case because, unlike the economy, power is a game of zero-sum. Therefore, all the power that the state necessarily has cannot be obtained at the same time by society. That is why we did not believe in partial solutions or central commitments. We know that doing things on average is an invitation to the return of the state, which, like a metastatic cancer, only knows how to expand and must be actively forced to retreat. It is no use trying to reach a fair bargain. Everything that exceeds its essential function must be definitively removed from its orbit, or sooner or later it will return to use up what does not belong to it. We know that it is not an easy task. The modern state has tools that have grown in sophistication over time. We are not talking about novice state like the fascist or the communist, but of a subtle and insidious state that advances over the individual through the art of propaganda and cultural infiltration. Or at least that was the case until recently, since it is increasingly difficult for it to hide its totalitarian character. We have seen, just to cite an example, that in certain European countries, citizens are being arrested for expressing themselves on social networks. But in more general terms, I am talking about the funding of the economy, encouraging the development of studies that justify the implementation of interventionist public policies and the purchase of media through public funding. I am talking about the multiple NGOs that live off our taxes, subsidies to the culture to produce propaganda, and here in the United States, of course, the ESID scandal that spent millions of taxpayers' dollars to finance magazines and television channels for electoral frauds, like in Brazil, or governments with discriminatory aspirations, such as those in South Africa. And as I said, governments with discriminatory aspirations, such is the South African one, among many other aberrations, including the agenda of climate paranoia, the excesses of gender ideology, and the investigation that led to the creation of the COVID-19 virus. However, the only thing that really results by globalist agendas to transfer wealth from the lower class of a rich country to the upper class of a poor country. In short, I'm talking about a global network of influence, information of paid opinion with the taxes of citizens, a system of unprecedented propaganda in human history, perhaps the biggest political scandal we have ever seen. And then those same hypocrites accuse Elon Musk of interfering in the elections of other countries. Clearly, his contempt is as great as his totalitarian aspirations. And if that level of collectivism and blood had had solutions, his apologists would at least have something to cling to. But no, that was historically the excuse of the statists of the past, that prosperity would arrive through the rational administration of resources by the state, resources that the private sector was unable to take advantage of. But that is not the case. However, we have witnessed that the quality of life of the people is worse the greater the quality of the state. Haig dedicated his last book to explaining this phenomenon, which he called the fatal conceit.
Hemos sido testigos de que a mayor expansión estatal, peor es la calidad de vida de la gente. No por nada Hayek dedicó
I have to say that I am very happy
al cual llamó
to have the opportunity to talk with you today. But this is not accidental. Beyond its evident incompetence, the political class is not dedicated to solving problems. After all, a problem solved is an area from which the state must withdraw. On the contrary, the political class is dedicated to perpetuating problems and thus living from them forever. That is why they have been creating new problems by installing them with their propaganda devices and then offering themselves as a solution. And what is that solution? In the implementation of regulations that cause even more problems to be solved by more regulations. In medicine, the term an atrociousness I used. In medicine, the term an atrociousness I used to refer to the damage suffered by a patient as a consequence of medical attention. It could be said then that the status regime consists of the atrociousness as a state policy. In other words, it is the doctor who enriches himself based on the progressive and intentional deterioration of his patients. With the model of the present state, the state breaks your legs, overcharges and forces you to thank him, and chases you if you don't do it. As a counterpoint, some testimonies say that in traditional Chinese medicine, the family doctor constantly charged honoraries for keeping the family healthy. In other words, according to the legend, when a patient was sick, the doctor stopped receiving the honoraries, seeing himself encouraged to solve the disease in an efficient and rapid way. Imagine how much misery we would have saved if the state could work this way. Today, those of us who want to dismantle these degenerates call us anti-democrats. But again, this is an interweaving of words, something very typical of the left to vary. They don't call democracy the government of the people, but the paradigm of total and unlimited state expansion that they themselves administer. For them, democracy exists, only if they win what they want, to be able to submit people to their whims. But when the electoral minority is them, the election of the majority becomes authoritarianism. In fact, many of those who accuse us as being against democracy were not even elected. They make decisions that affect millions of people around the world, but no one knows them. They are not responsible to anyone but themselves, and they cannot be cast out by the popular vote. And so they all come to lecture us about democracy. Anyway, they say that Trump and I are a danger to democracy, but in reality, they're saying that we are a danger to them. We are a danger to the state party, to those who live from their unlimited expansion, to those who want an individual dependent and subject to their regulatory whims. And you know what? You are right. We are their worst nightmare. We come for their privileges, having been elected by the majority of our peoples with a clear mandate to take away a power that does not belong to them. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Today, our countries, Argentina and the United States, need to pass their second independence. The first one freed us from the power of European monarchies. The second will free us from the tyranny of the state party. That is why we have put so much effort into identifying it, because it is not possible to fight against what is not known, and having a well-defined enemy is a fundamental aspect of our cultural battle. Now we know it, we have won in the elections, and we are in the process of disarming its Leviathan, which is a tool of perpetual oppression. We do not have a secret formula, only knowing the human history and knowing what has worked and what has not. That is why, with humility, I want to reflect a little on how we have been leading this battle. We work with firmness and without compromising. We defend a set of values that we are not willing to negotiate, just as they were not willing to negotiate when it came to taking away our freedom, which they imposed without our consent. It is being eliminated without their consent. That is why we have passed the chainsaw. Three the sectors and attributes of the state that we consider redundant, unnecessary, or directly pernicious to society. And even more so, this year we will undertake the phase 2 of this process, which we have baptized as the deep chainsaw, in order to continue shrinking the state, giving people back the wealth that was stolen. And we will continue to do so. 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 That is why it is important for the state to cut the hose for the clients of the state, in which it stands, who exert a face resistance to change, using the money of taxpayers and taxes to support us. Our method is similar to that of our dear friend Elon Musk, to check office by office to preserve what sells and works, and to roll out the rest. That is why I gave him a chainsaw. With us, no one who cannot justify the cost of his salary in taxes is safe. Many of them will have to return to the private sector and earn a living, offering their goods and services in the market, just like the taxpayers of those who they have lived off. My deepest condolences to the politicians who believe that this moment would never come and are not prepared because they are going to have a cold shower. Luckily for them, there is an opportunity. And due to our regulatory advance, the salaries of the private sector will continue to rise, so that if things are done well, they can be part of the progress, but far from the state caste. As I have already said, the state has to pay taxes. As I have already said, this is not a simple task. Here in the United States, rebellious bureaucrats have tried to sabotage the work at the Department of Government Efficiency, and they are resorting to bureaucratic and illegal mechanisms to try to block any reform, which also happened in our country, and it is something with which we must fight day by day, but none of that has taken us by surprise. We are aware that they will do their best to stop this change, regardless of the resulting damage. If they have to destroy the world to preserve their privileges, they will do it, and we will continue to fight. For today, the problem extends beyond the penalties to the model of the present state has subjected to each of our nations individually. Because the decline of our governments during recent history, over and over again, not only spiritually impoverished our own citizens, but also weakened us politically, economically, culturally, and socially against the external enemy. It made us morally weak and made us vulnerable to the worst expressions of barbarism, the worst enemies of freedom. And they cannot be given a centimeter, because when they smell blood, they advance bravely and mercilessly. This was demonstrated during the cowardly attacks perpetrated on October 7, 2023 in Israel, which cost more than 1,000 innocent and the capture of 251 people. This week, Israel received the lifeless bodies of the Vivas family, who were permanently kidnapped by the terrorist and murderous Hamas regime, including a mother and her 2 children, a 4-year-old child and a 9-month-old baby. This regime is so unscrupulous and bloodthirsty that, in the last days of the 20th century, they did not have a better idea than to openly display their atrocities in the face of a vicious crowd without the slightest respect. This is what is at stake, and we cannot afford to fail. That is why it is fundamental that the nations that we have embraced in the city of freedom remain united and collaborate with each other. We must form an alliance of free nations because, as I have already said on another occasion, the unorganized can only be defeated by the well-organized. Only through this international right can we put an end to the political caste that we are facing, which is sinking into the darkest depths in the West, and recover the impetus to protect our country. That is why I also want to take this opportunity to announce that Argentina wants to be the first country in the world to join this reciprocity agreement that the Trump administration is asking for in trade. And I'm also very happy to be able to say that Argentina wants to be the first country in the world to join this reciprocity agreement that the Trump administration is asking for in trade. In fact, if we were not restricted by the Mercosur, Argentina would already be working on a free trade agreement with the United States that is mutually beneficial and that does not burden unfairly Argentine producers, but neither Americans. This is so because only by working together with us who want to build a free world can we move forward. Only in this way can we get out of the nightmare of the omnipresent state, and thus be able to continue doing what we know how to do as the West, test the limits of what is possible, focusing on the creativity of society and not on the sterile discrepancy of bureaucrats. Only in this way can we return to our path of greatness as a civilization, honoring our ancestors who gave their lives to see a free world and a prosperous humanity. Only in this way can we finally look ourselves in the eye and create what made us great as a civilization. May God bless the Argentine Republic, may God bless the United States, and may the forces of heaven be with us. Long live freedom, damn it.